We want our clients to make really informed decisions. So we're the ones doing all the hard work and making sure we've done all that research for them and put the groundwork in to make sure they're educated as to what their opportunities are, et cetera, et cetera. Our motto is buy without regrets. And so
if you can buy a property that will serve you for 10 years as opposed to 3 years, that will serve you well. And something
buying a great property today, that's not just what it's about. It's also getting something that could be ripe for improvement when the time is right for that investor or for the next buyer.
You think about, right, lifestyle, what's important to you? How do you get to work? What do you need for your family? What amenities like parks and shops? Then you look at the budget.
Welcome to Street Secrets. I'm Chris Bates. I'm a mortgage broker since 2013. And in this podcast, we're going to be interviewing Australia's leading buyer's agents, ones with decades of experience, have the local insider knowledge on the street, and can really help you with your buying process, no matter whether you're a first home buyer, upgrader, investor. In this podcast, you'll get access to Australia's leading buyer's agents' minds every week on a Thursday. What's the word on the street? Welcome to Street Secrets. I'm in the studio today with Veronica Morgan. How you doing, Veronica?
Oh, I'm good, Chris. How are you?
I know, it feels a bit weird for us doing a podcast together. We've done 400 or so on The Elephant, and so this is a bit of a weird one. I've actually got you on a different show. So people who don't know you, though, and maybe haven't listened to any episodes of The Elephant, maybe just give me a bit of an understanding of what you do and where your buyer's agency business is and how long you've been an agent for.
Yeah, well, I've been a real estate agent for 25 years now, and I've been a buyer's agent for 18 of those years, and my business is 16 years old. It was 16 and a half now. So my business is called Good Deeds Property Buyers. We are based in Sydney. We're actually offices based in Balmain, but we do buy in Sydney's inner west, eastern suburbs, lower North Shore. And I started off selling real estate in Balmain 25 years ago. So that's sort of my little heart home, if you like.
Yeah. So when clients come to you, is there usually something that you think the buyers just really don't understand the value of buyer's agents and they're really surprised? Is there something that you feel that often when clients go through the process, they're really surprised by something you add a lot of value in?
Yeah, and look, it's changed a lot over the years. When I first started as a buyer's agent, we spent a lot of time educating people as to, what is a buyer's agent? What can we do for you? That job's sort of largely been done for a number of reasons. I guess a lot of people have an expectation of, or an understanding of what a buyer's agent is, certainly in our area anyway, and some idea of, what they get for it. Often their expectation is a little bit off skew. They're expecting us just to give them off markets and they sort of think that might be the value proposition, for example. It's a lot more to it than that. And I think overwhelmingly the feedback we get from our clients is how much they learnt through the process. And it's certainly one of our mottos is eyes wide open. We want our clients to make really informed decisions. So we're the ones doing all the hard work and making sure we've done all that research for them and put the groundwork in to make sure they're educated as to what their opportunities are, et cetera, et cetera. But what we want when they make those decisions is we want to be confident they make good decisions, and they're going to do that when they've been informed in ways that they often hadn't even thought they might need to know about. So it's really joyful for us. Our motto is buy without regrets. And so when we've got clients that make those decisions with all the knowledge of what they're doing and why they're doing it, it's very much, I guess, at the foundation of how we approach things.
Yeah, so you got more of a do it with me approach versus I'll just do it for you. Just tell me what you want, I'll go get it. You try to really educate your clients through the process and give them a sort of a life skill, I guess, as well at the same time.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of the unexpected byproduct. One of the things I've noticed over the many years of being a buyer's agent, and now obviously because I run the buyer's agent mentoring program as well, is that there's almost, you could divide buyer's agents into two camps. There's the order taker, very transactional, very much like, you want one of them? Sure, I'll go and get you one of them. Versus the buyer's agent who wants to really understand the goals and the objectives, and also wants to make sure the client isn't telling them what they want from their limited knowledge and understanding. And that ultimately they would regret it if they did have more knowledge. They would make a different decision. So we want to make sure that they've got the benefit of our consultative approach, if you like, and our years of experience and our knowledge around this space, so that when they might still end up exactly with what they wanted in the first place. But if that's not really the best solution for them, we want to make sure they've got the option to go down a different path before we all start working on it.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about like you said, they've been a real estate agent in the Balmain Peninsula and the inner west pocket for decades, and, a lot of learnings over these years. But what do you reckon makes the inner west pocket special in terms of, Australia and Sydney in particular?
There's quite a lot of pockets in the inner west. Balmain is one part of it. As you head a bit further west, if you like, you've got that sort of Five Dock, Drummoyne, Russell Lee area, which is a completely different demographic. You head sort of over through Haberfield, back over to Leichhardt and Annandale, and that's different. And then you go across Parramatta Road, you've got Stanmore and Petersham in that direction, and even where I live in Newtown, completely different. So there's a lot of different demographics within the inner west. I think if you wanted to sort of put a broad brushstroke over it, it's much more diverse, say, than the lower North Shore or the eastern suburbs in terms of the population. And I personally find it more down to earth because of that diversity. So I do like that. And that's a personal thing that I like. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, but interesting you said there, a number of pockets, and I mean, different places around the country have this situation, but the inner west in particular, right? So you're saying that different buyer pools gravitate to different parts of the inner west, and do you find that's one of the biggest challenges when people, maybe out of areas or even people who have grown up or renting in the inner west, is when they're having to explore, they're just, what works in, say, Drummoyne isn't going to work in, say, Marrickville, and they're different buyers.
They absolutely are different buyers. And it's interesting too, because I think Sydney-siders as a whole, because, we do more than the inner west, so we get to see this across other pockets as well. But Sydney-siders as a whole are very tribal, so if you grew up here, and I sort of often refer to this as being, you won't go over certain bridges. I wouldn't go over that bridge, If you're on the North Shore, might be, I won't go over the Roseville Bridge. Or if you're in the Sutherland Shires, I won't go over the Tom Ugley's Bridge, obviously, where I don't go over the Harbour Bridge or the Anzac Bridge. So there's these sort of bridges that people won't go across. Then you got main roads people won't go across. Like a Balmain person, a Balmain Peninsula, I won't go across Victoria Road, and somebody's in Annandale with, I won't go across Parramatta Road. So there's these sort of demarcations that happen through those little pockets. So anybody coming into the inner west or anyone coming into Sydney from outside Australia or outside Sydney, so they're moving here from interstate, for example, we have to sort of get them out there to, what we call it, to experience PLUs, people like us, right? It's not all about homogeny. It's about, I like diversity, so therefore I find PLUs in a very diverse area. But, I like to make sure that anybody who's moving to the area really has a really good understanding that the community in a sort of pocket is going to really fit with them and they're going to fit with it. And that's all part of the process as well.
Do you find that, that makes it really hard for new buyers to price property because they don't know that, it's on that side of the bridge or it's on that side of the road? And I mean, inner west is obviously very close to the Sydney CBD, and there's a lot of infrastructure that is changing in that area, from metros to roads. And is it really hard for buyers to get a grasp of, what should be discounted and what should be paid a premium on, just because it's so tribal, like you said, with the buyers?
Oh, 100%. For example, Rozelle as a suburb, you've got on the Balmain Peninsula as one type demographic or one type of price, and off the peninsula is another. There's Lilyfield's got 3 distinct sections, and depending on which pocket you're in as to how competitive it's going to be amongst local buyers. So anyone from outside the area who doesn't really understand those nuances can quite easily misunderstand why two properties might look very similar on paper, but one will actually be more competitive because of the pocket that's in, and they won't really understand that.
Is there some sort of danger pockets across the area that a lot of buyers, don't realise? They get really excited. I found this one on Domain or real estate, and there's a bunch of them available, and just through your experience that it's a pocket that isn't loved as much, and there's usually always issues with people trying to sell.
Yeah, there are those pockets. There's the pockets where some of it could be as simple as they're harder to get in and out of by car. A couple of one-way streets just make it really awkward. All the locals know that, but anyone coming from outside, it won't even occur to them until they start to try to live there, and they have to know that they have to drive down. They can only get into their street via one street, and if that's bumper-to-bumper traffic, every time they want to come home, they've got to sit in that, before they get home. So it can be as simple as that. It can be social housing. There's a lot of social housing dotted around. Some of it's, more problematic than others. So it's knowing, well, that little pocket there, that's a problem for people, and locals will give it a wide berth, whereas anyone coming from outside the area won't necessarily recognise that. So there's lots of those little traps. There's also flooding. All the flood maps have been changed in recent times, as you're probably aware. But what's a flood versus a flood zone, and what has flooded versus what hasn't flooded? So there's quite a lot in that. And also what's a bit sunken and mozzie infested in summer versus an area that's not. All of those little tiny things that come into play that we talk about day in, day out. It's like our DNA, we get it. But anyone from outside the area, they're like, what? You're kidding me.
Yeah, and I think that's obviously what a lot of local buyers want, and then what the new buyers to the area wants. What's some of the mistakes you see that a lot of the new to area buyers make? I mean, when you're in the inner west, house prices are 2 plus in a lot of cases, right? And a lot of buyers have very limited budgets. They really want a house and they really want to be close to the city, and they're willing to make quite a lot of compromises. What are some of the compromises they sort of regret down the line that they haven't thought through? You mentioned something there about a one-way street and, getting stuck in traffic. And what are some of the other ones you see that are common mistakes new to area buyers make?
I don't want to harp on this too much because there's a lot of aircraft noise in the inner west and we all live with it, right, to certain degrees. But I guess what people don't realise is that different seasons have different air traffic. So I live in Newtown. In summer, we get a lot of noise, and also our windows are open as well. There's a lot more aircraft noise, but it's because of the prevailing winds. Whereas in winter, I don't get much aircraft noise at all. Plus, my windows are shut anyway, so I wish it was the other way around. Sadly, it isn't. But little things like that, people just wouldn't realise that it can be very seasonal. Likewise, in beachside suburbs, some people buy in beachside suburbs without realising it. If they buy in winter, they won't realise the influx of visitors in summer. So that's another type of example of how seasonally things can really change quite dramatically.
Yeah, I've seen clients obviously work with yourself and different buyers agents over the years in the inner west, and often clients, they fall in love with properties, maybe just haven't got a nice facade or weird blocks because they're just trying to get a house or weird floor plans and, it's 2 small bedrooms, etc. There's a lot of sort of mistakes, I feel, in the inner west where you can, you've got a house, but have you got a really true asset, a quality asset? Do you find that that's a mistake that a lot of people sometimes follow?
What we often see is somebody's from outside their area and they're looking at property with the lens that they have in whatever area they've come from. And it can happen with contemporary houses that sort of aren't maybe not architect designed. Yep. And even with some architect design houses, let me tell you. But it can happen with, with a period home, for example. There's just timeless appeal with a period home, particularly if it's been well maintained and has a good renovation out the back. But a lot of contemporary homes, they might be okay when they're first built. But if they date badly, if they really don't have a sort of timeless quality to them, often they can appeal to people outside the area and they do not appeal to locals. And so sometimes, and I've seen this, where outside area buyers have paid over the odds because they might have compared it to, you get an extra bathroom in this house versus a period home, for argument's sake. I can't understand why people aren't fighting over it. It's a bargain or whatever. And everyone else looks at it and think, God, they overpaid for that. That can happen a lot by just not understanding what the locals really will value and pay a premium for.
So let's go there. In the inner west, just generally speaking, like what are some of the boxes you'd love to tick if you had, the budget for it? And what are the locals just, go bananas for?
Well, locals will go bananas for family homes. It can be different in different suburbs in terms of there's nuances here, but certainly across the board, a freestanding double-fronted period home on a level block which has got no weird angles or anything. It's a good-sized garden. It's had a sympathetic renovation at some point of time. It's got parking, you know what I mean? All of those things. And it's north-facing. If it's got a north-facing garden, it's like boom, boom, boom. And it's a nice street. Well, hey, we all get excited about that.
Yeah, and I guess it's just trying to know what compromises are the right ones to make here for buyers because, to get that might be a budget that, let's be real, won't be affordable, but it's about sort of saying, okay, well, if I'm making an aspect, is it also not on a great block? And is it a weird block? And is it also, compromise on the type of property? And is that sort of where you do a lot of the comparisons of and turning clients away from properties, even though there's nothing hard to find good assets, you're having to convince them to keep looking just because it's just not a great asset?
Yeah, look, I mean, one of the things we do really focus heavily on our clients understanding what's an A-grade asset, right? And, we know sometimes they will buy B grade, and B grade's not bad, but C grade definitely is bad. We want to educate them as to the compromises they're making potentially to capital growth, ongoing capital growth. And I know that a lot of people are thinking they're going to be in the homes for a long time. They're not so focused on that now. And I always like to say to them, well, you're not, but we will be, because in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years or whatever, you're going to thank us. And obviously investors have a different approach and they do want the capital growth. And so they're quite happy for us to make selections based on that. Whereas then a home buyer has a lot more emotional aspects that they've got to consider and we've got to factor into it. And a lot more decision makers with valid opinions, of course. Everyone needs to be heard, right? So we often call what we do property therapy because we're sort of guiding people through this process and being marriage counselors along the way. So there are times when, they just can't afford exactly what they want in the area in which they want it. So we really do, at the very outset, we take every single search client through a process where we really clearly show them what the possibilities are for their search. We're showing them recent sales and we're explaining to them what might need to give and showing them that so that they can decide what is going to give for them. And it might be the location, it might be that we introduce a suburb that they hadn't thought about, but we understand their lifestyle, we understand what they're trying to achieve, and we think there's a good chance that that sort of property will come up within their budget in that area. Or it might be that they do decide to make a compromise on the property itself, or it might also be that they do have flex in their budget. They just have come to us with what they hope to spend, but when we're showing them you're not going to get what you want for that, they've got the ability to get access to more money and they will revisit their budget. So generally speaking, we need to tackle one of those three areas with nearly every client before we really commence the search to make sure that we're not having too many of those awkward conversations during the search.
Is that something you've got better with over time? I mean, it saves a lot of time for everybody and it saves people a lot of money because they can potentially make decisions faster, by doing the work up front. But we always like that back in the, say 10, 15 years ago. Is that something that you feel like you've got just due to the market knowledge, you can have that much broader conversation and much deeper because you've just got that, market knowledge over many years?
We have a very structured approach to this and we've been doing it now for, I can't tell you exactly how long, but at least 10 years. And we call it a getting started session. We even sell the session as a standalone session because it's so valuable. And we've had some people do it and then they didn't even engage us to do the search because we had one couple that had been looking for 4 years and then they just couldn't get it together and then they bought within a month. So it is extraordinarily powerful in crystallizing and clarifying exactly where they should be focusing their attention. And it is something, yes, we just get better and better at it because it is absolutely in our DNA now. So some of those people that we would have done a getting started session for that were not necessarily thinking about engaging us as buyer's agents, but then decided to, we found that we bought for them a hell of a lot faster because we just got on the same page quicker and they could see the right opportunity for them. And there was less of that sort of painful learning as you keep looking at looking in an area and then you realize you can't afford it. Then you go to another area and then all of a sudden you realize that, oh God, I missed that boat too. Buyers spend years sometimes, but definitely months in trial and error trying to work out where's the sweet spot for them. And so we just bring that to a head at the beginning.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not shooting your trumpet here, but I think that when I've looked at all over the years, the clients who have done the best are the ones who get on the same page early. They get really clear on what they're looking for. They say no to a lot of properties and then they go really hard when the right property comes on because they're so clear and they're together. And whether they're doing it themselves or with a buyer's agent, I also find when they go to buyer's agents and they haven't done that legwork up front, sometimes get disappointed with the outcome because they haven't really dealt with those compromises and gone, well, yeah, we're never going to get that for our budget. And they've had that realization. And then maybe they've gone for a needle in the haystack strategy, pursuing something that was never going to happen. And so I think that's extremely valuable, that part of your process. Before we go on to just relationships of agents in the area and how they play a big role, apartments in the inner west, and how do you sort of think about them and how do you sort of approach them with clients?
Sort of building by building, to be quite frank. There's different types of apartments in different pockets, if you like. If you looked at Drummoyne, for example, you've got a lot of quite large, sort of not the harbour there anymore, it's Parramatta River, but it's you've got quite large waterfront apartments with views across the city and the Harbour Bridge. And that's how you're going to get a pretty amazing view, really, and great lifestyle. They've got level blocks. Often they've got boat sheds and they've got pools and you've got canoes and all the rest of it. That's one type of apartment. Then you've got, say, over in Marrickville, places like that, you've got your three-story red brick walk-ups, and actually got them in Drummoyne as well. So you've got everything from one extreme to the other. And there's pockets with lots of new builds as well, or recent builds. And some of those have stood the test of time. They're great complexes and others haven't. So that's where that local, I guess, knowledge comes in to basically, we can almost pick a building or a street and go, nah, won't touch that, we'll touch that. So I think that the right apartment can be a really good asset. And also the thing is that even in those buildings, we won't buy every apartment in those buildings. So we're very fussy about which apartment we would buy in any particular building. And there's an enormous amount of due diligence that needs to be gone into with apartments, particularly with some of those aging ones as well. So it's not just the new ones that have problems. Aging ones often, they might 50, 60 years old now, and they're actually coming up to some quite significant maintenance that is needed on them. So there's a lot of work to be done in apartments, but you buy a good one in a well-run building, and I think you can do very well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as less people can afford houses, right, they're going to be forced to live in apartments, and a lot of people prefer them at different stages of their lives, and they don't want the backyard. And singles, couples, childless families, single parents, downsizers, there's a huge demand for them, but they're not going to want all the apartments, right? And there's going to be some true scarcity, and there's going to be areas in the inner west, particularly in Sydney, where they're going to build a lot more apartments. And so you've just got to understand how that's going to really affect the livability long term. Yeah, there's a lot of players. It's a good place in Sydney to sell property, right? They're not cheap, and there's a lot of listings, I guess, potentially. How does that play into what you do, and how important is it as part of your business?
Pretty much all the agents, across the inner west, because I'm not the only one on the team with 25 years experience, like most of my team have got the same depth of experience. So across all of us, we've got relationships with agents. We know the ones that we have to handle with kid gloves. We know the ones that we can level with and have a really frank conversation with. We know the ones that they've got lots of off markets, if you want to call that the exciting thing, but most of it's junk. We know the ones that would never have off markets because they want to take everything to market. We know the ones that will sell prior to auction because they really hate taking stuff to auction. We know the ones that will take everything to auction if they can. We know all of those sort of nuances about how they operate, so that when we're in a situation where we're dealing with one of them, we can formulate our strategy around knowing how that agent operates. And that's a really important part of our process. And even with an agent that we haven't necessarily dealt with before, because we've got 8 different avatars of agents, we actually talk about, when we formulate negotiation strategy, identifying the type of agent is actually part of that process. Even with agents that we haven't necessarily dealt with before, we're able to look at how they behave and get the clues from how they behave as to actually how we need to deal with them. So it's a good process. It's a good process. We enjoy it. We get it. We get that some of them wouldn't lie straight in bed, and we get that some of them are highly, highly skilled and really good operators and a pleasure to deal with.
Do you think that's something that obviously experience and knowledge and just a reputation of someone who's a much more experienced buyer's agent has the advantage of, say, a new buyer or a new buyer's agent just hasn't got those relationships and just doesn't know how to, to get the result out of them, because they all work in different ways. They've all got different motivations. They all have different preferences in how they want to get offers and go to auction. And it's just something experience tells you, not only how you make your offer, but how you actually work with the agent to get an outcome.
Oh, 100%. Because as you say, they all have different processes. There's no legislative process of handling a negotiation. There are nuances within that. And so you've got to understand that. And you've also got to have your ears attuned to the things that they say and how they say them. Agents have all got dialogue, right? And that dialogue constantly evolves as they get different trainers. Often it comes from the trainers. They all start using a different phraseology, and you think, oh, I haven't heard that one before. So we'll come back and we'll debrief it amongst ourselves. And what do you reckon they're trying to do? And so we've got our ears attuned to that, and we're thinking, okay, well, let's just watch this one. Let's see how that plays out and see what this new tactic that they're trying to use, right? And so we're aware of that. And most agents, particularly the ones that know us, but even those that don't know us, it doesn't take long to work out we know what we're doing. You know what I mean? They're like, they're not newbies, right? And the things they tell me about what they do to newbies shocks me. And it's horrific that people are paying these buyer's agents with no experience, and the sales agents are running rings around them. And that is horrific. And they'll share those stories with us, and they'll have a bit of a brag, and they'll have a bit of a giggle, and they're like, we could never get away with that with you, but hey, get a load of this one. And they'll tell us some stories. So the thing with these sales agents, though, is that's very important, is to understand that not just how they're dealing with you as the buyer, but how they're dealing with their owner, the conversations they're having with their owner versus the ones they're having with you. Who are they applying the most amount of pressure on? And if they're trying to manufacture an offer and get you to make an offer, then is there really another offer, or are they using the same bait to get everybody who might be interested, somebody to push the button, and then all of a sudden the pre-auction offer process happens, for example. So there's all these little tricks that they will play, and we see beyond the trick to see why are they doing that? What intel can we get about the competitive situation because of the way that they're doing that? Now that takes years of experience, but not just experience. It takes an interest in working that stuff out. If you're just going to take everything at face value, you're not going to notice that stuff and you're not going to be able to apply it in your strategy.
You made some good points there around motivating the vendor, right? And what the story they're telling them and giving them that story. And how do you sort of approach a negotiation? I know you do a lot of work around due diligence and making sure it's a good asset and coming up with your own pricing, but what's some sort of common negotiation strategies that you have to employ?
Put it this way, we've got to work out who we're competing with. Are we negotiating with the vendor, i.e. are we the only one? In which case we're negotiating with the vendor via the agent. Right?
Yep.
Now, the agent also might have ego involved, or they might have egg on their face because they told the vendor too much money and they're trying to get it out of us because they really can't manage that owner. Like there's all these sorts of things that go on, and we're going to be working out who do we have to win over here? Alternatively, if we're going to auction, or if there really are a lot of buyers on this thing and for whatever reason they're selling it prior instead of going to auction, we've then got to have our approach to tackle, I want to stop that person bidding against me. And so the agent and the vendor, they're immaterial until we get that other buyer out of the way, So how do I do that without overspending? So we're very tactical in very much identifying who's our target here. Who have we got to master to get this property at the right price? But if we wind back a little bit, we do a lot of work on pricing, as you've said. And we also have to have all these conversations with our client as to, okay, well, where will you go if you have to? And when I say if you have to, it's not because the vendor wants it. We're not just going to bend over and give the vendor whatever they want because they just want more money than it's worth. It's if other people compete with us. Like, where will you go in a competitive situation? So we really do break down all the different scenarios for our client so that they can instruct us accordingly. And they also know when we go down a path, because we actually share our negotiation strategy with the client. We make sure they're fully aware of what we're doing and why we're doing it. We're not making them do any work. They just tell us what they want us to do once we've advised them. The client doesn't have to do the work. It's us. We're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, you're right there. Obviously, you've got your vendor, you've got your agent, and you've got to sort of get through. But obviously, a lot of the time is your client. It's very scary, right? We're talking millions of dollars that clients are spending. And what gives them confidence, though, is that real market knowledge and you having the confidence to say, look, it's actually, a AAA grade asset. It's worth stretching for this one. It matches everything you want for your brief, or it's not. And so maybe you shouldn't go as hard on this one. And so, but I think that sounding board and that sort of, or don't pursue this one at all. The building and pest has come back and it's horrendous. That's a really value add that I think, the experience gives you, because you need to have someone who you can trust in your corner, because you've got to make decisions fast, right? Particularly in when good assets come on, they don't just sit on the market and offers can get kicked off at any point. What are some of the things that, it's easy to sort of reflect when you're at home sometimes and you just think, oh, I feel like I added a lot of value to that client, but it wasn't what they were expecting. You said education at the start of this, but what were some of the other things where you think, oh, just people just weren't expecting that? And at the end of the day, that's the difference maker that they remember the most.
In our business in particular, I'm not sure if I mentioned it earlier, but we sort of have this attitude of property therapy. And that is because it's highly emotional. Even investors have a lot of emotion around spending a lot of money on property. They might deny it. They might say that they want to remove the emotion, and they might be run by a lot of fear, which is still an emotion, So there is a lot of emotion, and particularly with couples, because it's very high stakes, right? Often couples are not necessarily in agreement on everything. One of our clients actually once said this about us. She said, "You're the threesome that's good for our marriage." So I love that line. And it's because we're able to make sure both sides are heard, but we're also coming to them with evidence, and we're coming to them with a proven methodology, lots of experience, and just that confidence that comes with that, so that they're actually able to stop bickering with each other and second guessing each other. And so, you just want to spend more money. Well, you're just a tight ass, that they can stop doing all that, and they can go, okay, well, let's just listen to the expert that we decided to pay to help us. And because my team are so experienced, and it's on that emotional EQ side of things as well, there's a high degree of that in the business, we can bring that to the table. And so they do actually, it's interesting because the ones that have been really, really tightly holding on to their opinion about something, but was fundamentally wrong or getting in the way of them getting really where they want to be or achieving what they want to achieve, quite often afterwards they'll sheepishly admit that they were wrong, or that sheepishly admit that they were the ones in the way, getting in the way. But it's a safe place, there's no sort of point scoring, and we want to make sure that there's no situation where one client has ridden roughshod over the other, because then there will be a situation of regret down the track. And so that is something that is quite surprising for clients, is that they feel heard, and they both feel heard, even though they're thinking often at the beginning that one of them is going to have to capitulate, but they don't. They don't actually work that way. We sort of get the Venn diagram where they're pulled in opposite directions, and we sort of reset it so we can look at really the common areas. And often it's so much more common ground than they sort of think there is when they come to us.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it play out time and time again when, one person's leading the charge, the other one's just rocking up on the Saturday, maybe even, hasn't really looked at all the properties, one's doing all the legwork, and, maybe they're even self-sabotaging. I don't like it, I don't like it, I don't like it. Or they just saying yes to anything, and, and they bought it, they move in, and then, 2 years later, they just admit they never liked it, or they're never part of the process, or maybe the other person didn't include them. And so I think bringing them both on the journey and, not letting them self-sabotage each other, and, that could, like you say, can kill them times of years, or it may end up in the wrong property. And I think that's what a true trusted advisor does. And I guess with your personality and your team, you're straight shooters, you don't dance around down the bush. You sort of, if you can see it, you call it out, and you'd rather that conversation now, because actually it's in everyone's interest to have those conversations early. Why did you do the mentoring of the buyer's agency? I think that's it's giving back a bit to the industry while you're having a business as well. But, it has to be something a bit bigger motivating you to do that rather than just do buyer's agency work.
Over the years, people keep coming to me asking me about, I want to become a buyer's agent. How should I become a buyer's agent? Can I buy your coffee and talk about becoming a buyer's agent? And I just frankly don't have enough time to talk to all the people that come to me. So I originally created a Facebook group called I Want to Be a Buyer's Agent. I said, look, just come in there and then you can ask questions and we'll just scale it effectively. And then I just kept getting so many people asking, how do I get a mentor? Because it's an industry full of micro businesses, and it's very difficult to find a business that's large enough to employ people. And over the 16 years I've had a business, I've trained 12 competitors in that time. So not everyone that I've trained still works for me. I've got a really tight team now, and I absolutely love them. But over the time, I've kissed a lot of frogs, and a few people have decided they want to do it themselves. And I thought, you know what, people can pay me now rather than me pay them to teach them how to do it. But not just that. When I put it together, I had 16 years experience in total. So it's a couple of years ago I put it together. And I realised all the trial and error, all the things that I'd taken 16 years to learn. Well, I'm freely offering that. Yes, it does cost them, but I'm freely offering them the IP of how my business runs. Like that getting started session, for instance, I mentioned earlier, one of the masterclasses teaches them exactly how to do one, right? Now, it's up to them if they want to take that on and bring that into their business. But for best practice, for more buyer's agents to be better, that's what I would love, because unfortunately, we've had an influx of new buyer's agents into this industry who are absolutely shit. And I find it horrific. So it is a personal bugbear of mine, because I really want to raise the bar and I want to give consumers more options than they do currently, given that the vast majority of buyer's agents, in my view, are not worth paying.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fast-growing industry, right? Very little market share. It's been around for a while, but, I guess it's got a lot of steam over the last 5-10 years. And with that, a lot of new buyers agency into the industry with a very low barrier in terms of qualification. And it's also a job I think it takes a long time to get good at. You've got a lot of people entering at a fast time, and, and they're helping clients, but they just haven't got the runs on the board. And it's not because they aren't good people. They're trying to, but they just don't know what they don't know. And I feel like it's a job it just takes many years to get good at. And it's a real challenge. And so, hats off for the Buyer's Agent Mentor. Thanks so much for the chat today. Links are in the show notes if you want to chat to Veronica or the team at Good Deeds. We've worked with Veronica many times. We've done 400 episodes on the elephant together, and always enjoy our chats. Thanks, Veronica.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks so much for listening today. We hope you got lots of value out of it. If you'd like to speak to our guest today, there's links in the show notes on how you can get in contact. And if you're buying your first home, upgrading, renovating, or need any finance-related queries, obviously we'd love to help. There's links in the show notes to us as a mortgage broker, and we look forward to next week's episode.